Welcome, viewers, to Body Unified Flow. Here, we simplify complexity and amplify performance. Today, we're diving deep into some seriously revolutionary ideas from Henry Ford's 1926 classic. We are looking back at a piece of history that literally laid the bedrock for modern lean manufacturing. We're going to be dissecting part one of his absolute masterpiece, Today and Tomorrow, specifically focusing on the concepts of the wage motive and true service. Okay, let's jump right into this incredibly fascinating material.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start off with our learning objectives, then we're going to dismantle what Ford called the profit motive myth. From there, we'll explore his principle of true service, really unpack the mechanics of the wage motive, and then take a hard look at how he radically redefined time, waste, and progress. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with a quick summary and our references.
Section 1, Learning Objectives, what you will gain from this session.
Let's set our focus on exactly what we want to achieve together today. By the end of this explainer, you're going to be able to clearly tell the difference between the wage motive and the profit motive. You'll also be able to define the absolute true meaning of service in a business context, recognize exactly how raising wages actively creates a consumer base, and finally, identify Ford's super unique, unsentimental views on time and efficiency. The big takeaway here is that we aren't just dusting off old history, we're looking at timeless operational blueprints that still apply today.
Section 2, The Profit Motive Myth, a flawed approach to industry.
Right, let's look at this stark contrast. The traditional profit motive basically says a business owner should pay employees the absolute lowest possible wage, charge the public the highest possible price, and just pocket the difference. But Ford argues that this is a complete illusion. Why? Well, because the public doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. By suppressing wages and hiking up prices, a business is essentially strangling itself. It's destroying the purchasing power of its very own potential customers, which ultimately narrows its market down to nothing. Now, on the flip side, we have the wage motive. This completely flips the script. You relentlessly increase your efficiency so you can lower prices for the consumer, all while raising wages for the employee. And doing this doesn't shrink your market. It continuously, actively expands it.
Section 3, The Principle of True Service, Redefining Corporate Obligations.
This brings us to a massive pivot in our analysis. Ford had a highly practical definition of what service actually means. He said, a business that does not make a profit for the buyer of a commodity, as well as for the seller, is not a good business. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. He profoundly believes that the number one obligation of any business is to the public. If a customer isn't tangibly better off after buying your product than they were when their money was still sitting in their pocket, well, the transaction is a total failure. True service means both parties absolutely must become wealthier through the exchange.
And this interconnected ecosystem really shows us why true service is just mandatory. Ford realized something pretty profound. The owners, the employees, and the buying public, they aren't completely separate groups living in isolated bubbles. They are one unified ecosystem. The plain fact is, your own employees ought to be your absolute best customers. If you treat labor like it's just an annoying expense to be minimized, you're actively impoverishing the exact people you rely on to buy your goods. Once you realize that the worker literally is the public, your entire perspective on management and service totally shifts.
Section 4, The Wage Motive Explained, Driving Growth Through Higher Pay. So how exactly do you drive massive industrial growth just by paying people more? Let's travel back to 1914. Ford totally shocked the global industrial world. He took the minimum wage, which was just slightly over $2 at the time, and essentially doubled it overnight to a flat $5 a day. No way, right? People literally thought he had lost his mind. But here's the thing. This wasn't charity. Actually, scratch that. It was pure genius. By instantly giving his workers unprecedented purchasing power, he made it possible for the very people building the cars to actually afford to buy them. He didn't just manufacture cars. He manufactured his own consumer base. Let's put that into perspective with some hard numbers. Over a 12-year span, from 1914 to 1926, Ford systematically pushed the minimum wage up to $6 a day. But look at what happened to the price of the cars. The price dropped by 40%. In the original text, Ford notes this staggering fact: because of these massive efficiencies, a highly refined touring car actually ended up costing less per pound than beefsteak. Crazy, right? He doubled wages and cut prices nearly in half. And how did he pull that off? Because paying those high wages basically forced management to stop being lazy. They couldn't just lean on cheap labor anymore, so they had to innovate wildly to reduce costs everywhere else.
Okay, so here is the sequential wage motive blueprint. Step 1.
Design the product purely to help people. Honestly, if it's not a true service, just don't build it. Step 2, relentlessly innovate your internal methods to cut costs. Now, this doesn't mean cutting corners, it means cutting waste. Step 3, funnel all those savings right into lower prices for the consumer to expand your market. And finally, step 4, pay the highest possible wages to your workers so you sustain their purchasing power. And you know what? The burden of making all of this work falls directly on the shoulders of management, not labor.
Section 5. Time, Waste, and Progress. Redefining Efficiency for the Power Age. Now, paying those high wages while continuously lowering prices means you have to find massive efficiencies. And the word efficiency gets a pretty bad rap these days, but Ford redefined it completely. For him, efficiency is basically just doing work in the best way you know, rather than the worst way. It's like taking a heavy trunk up a hill on a truck instead of breaking a guy's back, making him carry it. True efficiency isn't some tool to oppress workers or speed them up until they burn out. It's the application of machinery and developed power to actually free people from drudgery so they can earn more, have more, and live way more comfortably. His whole perspective on waste was also completely unconventional. Normally, we think of waste as, scrap metal or dropped materials. But physical scrap can just be melted down and used again. Time waste, on the other hand, is the ultimate tragedy. Wasted time is lost human energy, and you can literally never salvage it or get a refund on it. It's just gone. Ford even looked at excess warehouse inventory as a form of time waste. To him, it was just stored, depreciating human labor sitting around doing nothing. On top of that, he firmly believed that creating jobs just to keep people busy is practically a crime against society, simply because it ultimately forces your prices up and your wages down.
81 hours. That is the jaw-dropping metric that proved his entire system actually worked. By ruthlessly stripping out time wastes, standardizing absolutely everything, and refusing to hold any excess warehouse inventory, Ford's Rouge complex achieved an average production cycle of just 81 hours. To put that into perspective, from the exact moment raw iron ore was dug out of the earth, it took just over 3 days for it to be processed, cast, assembled into a finished working automobile, and loaded onto a freight car. Unbelievable speed. And it was driven entirely by this obsession with eliminating the waste of human time. Section 6. Summary and References. Consolidating our learning. All right, let's consolidate the really powerful insights we've uncovered today. Here are your main takeaways to apply to your own performance. First up, the old profit motive is a trap that's going to shrink your market. You've got to embrace the wage motive to actively expand it. Second, true service isn't just some corporate buzzword. It literally means making sure your customer walks away wealthier. Third, remember that high wages and low prices are not opposing forces at all. They actually work together to actively build your consumer base. And lastly, use efficiency not as a whip to punish your teams, but as a lever to liberate them from drudgery and wasted time. Checking back against our initial goals, I'd say we've successfully hit our learning objectives. You've now got a solid, masterful grasp on the contrast between the wage and profit motives. We've laid out the demanding mechanics of true service. You've seen the direct, undeniable link connecting high worker wages to market creation. And finally, we've unpacked exactly why time waste is the singular, unsalvageable enemy of progress. For those of you who want to dig a little deeper into the source material, all the concepts we discussed today are derived straight from Henry Ford's 1926 classic, Today and Tomorrow, specifically the commemorative edition featuring some great insights from Norman Bodek and James J. Padilla. It is absolutely highly recommended reading for anyone who's serious about lean performance.
We're going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If these timeless principles, ruthlessly eliminating waste, driving down prices, and pushing wages to their absolute maximum, could radically revolutionize the entire global industrial world nearly a century ago, well, how might applying the wage motive transform your performance, your teams, and your business tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining us, and keep simplifying complexity to amplify your performance.